Hello and welcome everybody to the Harbor Commission July 2025 meeting. I'm Chair Adam Stanowik, and I'm calling to order this meeting at 6:30 p.m. And Mr. Lopez, could please start out with a roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Ford.
Here.
Commissioner McCrae.
Here.
Commissioner Nelson is absent. Commissioner Stedman.
Here.
And Chair Stanwyck.
Here. Great, thank you. Director Wiltshire, do we have any changes to the agenda this evening?
No changes, Chair.
Great, thank you. Also, I believe we have one general public comment. Mr. Lopez, can you please either admit them online or call them to the podium?
Yes, as of now, we have one speaker slip submitted for general public comment, Tracy Wilfong. And just a reminder for everyone online, if you'd like to speak at any point, please raise your hand within the Zoom platform.
Hello, Mr. Wilfong. Yep, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Hello, Commission. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and thank you for that. Tracy Wilfong is my name. All my family and myself, we all are ocean swimmers. So, of course, we do not like the cruise ships in our small bay here. Santa Barbara is the birthplace of Earth Day. I would like us all to remember that. There are harbors all over the world that are making a statement and banning cruise ships, but here we are. I appreciate that you are making the effort. Reduce the number of cruise ships. Please reduce their size. I notice that they are still humongous. Please make sure they are A+ rated and not F rated. And also charge the maximum per person. Don't undersell yourselves. And thank you again. And please do what you can to keep our oceans clean, safe, and our marine life also vibrant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilfong. Okay, Mr. Lopez, do we have any other general public comment out there?
There are no speaker slips submitted and no hands raised, Chair Stanwyck.
Oh, yes.
Oh, were you? Oh, my apologies. Paul Spieler.
All right, hello, my name is Paul Spieler, and first of all, thank you for your service to the community. It's greatly appreciated, and I am a director of the Santa Barbara Yacht Club, and so I'm just kind of here to represent our group. I've been an active boater all my life going to Channel Islands, and I just want to commend you guys on enacting the insurance policy for vessels. I think that's very good. I would also recommend that we require that there's some kind of requirement to show that vessels are seaworthy, that they can go out of the harbor and sail. I know from my experience, there's a lot of derelict vessels that aren't underway, and that would free up a lot of slips probably for active boaters. And because it took us we bought our first boat that needed a slip, and it took us about two and a half years to get that slip for that boat. So anyways, thank you very much.
Thanks for the comment, Mr. Spieler. Okay, do we have any other public commenters in queue online or with speaker slips submitted?
No, Chair Stanwyck.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mr. Lopez. Move on to work group reports. Vice Chair Ford.
Thank you. First of all, are there any work group reports from other commissioners? Otherwise, I will begin with the strategic planning work group report. Commissioner Stedman and Commissioner Nelson and I met with Director Wilshire on July 1st for an initial review of the results of the waterfront survey that was conducted recently. While a full review of the data and its implications will be an important part of our August Harbor Commission agenda, I would like to share the results, some of the results in general, and give you a preview because we believe that they will be ultimately very helpful to us for the following reasons. One is the abundance of responses is excellent. Also, the diversity of responses is really representative of the diversity of stakeholders for the harbor. The results are really quite consistent throughout, and the questions that were created by the Waterfront Department with significant appreciated input from our work group, are comprehensive, and they welcomed detailed feedback. And the respondents took time to respond with numerous comments in addition to simple answers to the questions. So stay tuned for the August report and analysis. That's it.
Great,
Would you
thank you.
like to add anything, Commissioner Stedman?
No, other than I was also impressed with the number of responses that we received to that survey. So thank you to the public.
Great, thank you, guys. Okay, moving on to item numbers 1 and 2 and the consent calendar. Mr. Lopez, can you please read the consent calendar for us?
Yes, item 1, approval of the minutes, recommendation that Harbor Commission waive further reading and approve the minutes from the regular meeting of May 15th, 2025 and the special meeting of June 24th, 2025. And item 2, proposed lease agreement with Allied Voyage LLC, DBA Ocean Air. Recommendation that Harbor Commission review and recommend City Council approval of a 5-year lease agreement with Allied Voyage LLC, DBA Ocean Air at an initial base rent of $800 per month for the approximately 167 square feet of second floor office space designated as 125 Harbor Way, Suite 21.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission regarding items 1 or 2 of the consent calendar? Okay, great. Well, this time a motion would be in order.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Lopez, can you please do a vote for items number 1 and 2 of the consent calendar?
Yes, this is a motion by Commissioner Cohen, seconded by Commissioner McCray, to approve items 1 and 2 of the consent calendar. Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Ford?
Aye.
Commissioner McCray?
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson is absent. Commissioner Stedman?
Aye.
And Chair Stanwyck.
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Nelson absent.
Great, thank you. I know that was a product of one of the special meetings, and also shout out to the RFP committee who made that happen for item number 2. So thank you, guys. Moving on to new business. Item number 3, the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District presentation on 2025 clean air grants for marine vessels. Mr. Lopez, can you please read the recommendation?
Yes, this is item 3, recommendation that Harbor Commission receive a presentation from Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District on their 2025 clean air grants for marine vessels, eligibility, priority populations of low income and disadvantaged communities, grant agreement process, and outreach.
Great, thank you. Turning it over to the waterfront.
Yeah, no, I'll be brief. Just wanted to introduce Mike McKay. He comes every year. He's with the Air Pollution Control District, and he shares information on their grant programs. So appreciate his time for coming to share his programs with the public.
Welcome, Mr. McKay.
Yeah, thank you. So this presentation is very similar to the ones I've given to you guys in years past. So with a little bit of a rinse and repeat, but we do want to just keep this fresh in everyone's mind. So you can go to the next slide. So our 25 program actually opens next Monday on July 28th. We were hoping to do last week's meeting to kind of give a little more notice, but it is what it is. It's a 40-day application window, closes on September 5th. That's when we stop receiving applications. And it's not first come, first serve. So just as long as an application for a grant is turned in within that window, we then review it and rank it for potential funding after the window closes. And we rank projects on a large variety of things. Type of project it is, total emission reductions, cost effectiveness, things of that sort. You know, next. So eligibility, as you can see, commercial vessels with diesel engines are the primary source of our grant funding for marine projects. We do require vessels to operate 50% of the time in the coastal waters of Santa Barbara, San Luis, and Ventura counties. The rest of that time can be in California coastal waters. And over the last 5 years, we've received 34 applications for marine projects. 25 of those 34 we made grant offers to, and 12 accepted those offers. 13 declined, and that was for a number of reasons. Typically, the offer was not enough for them to justify the new engine purchase, and that makes sense. The cost of these engines is getting really high, and it's really impactful for the owners, and we're aware of that, and we try to. That's why we come to presentations like this to, the earlier you apply, the more money you can get. on the marine side. So I'll get into the commercial harbor craft regulation and the requirements that are in the pipeline for commercial vessel owners on a later slide. And so you can go to the next slide. So this process here is what we use for our grant program. It looks a little cumbersome, but it's actually pretty straightforward. We receive an application, and then I'm the one that does all the marine projects, so I'll work with the applicant to make sure we have everything we need for completeness. We review all the projects after the application window's closed, and we rank them based on some of the items I just mentioned. The process, like I said, can seem tedious, but I have worked with many of the vessel owners on the commercial fishing side, and there's actually someone here today who we've given an engine to, or engines to, and I believe that they would be fine to discuss how easy I am to work with despite being a government employee who's here to help. So you can go to the next slide. So we've given over $4 million to marine projects over the years. Late June, we started sending emails to our outreach list, which is 1,100 plus people. We actually took the advice, I believe it was Commissioner Cohen last year that said we should go to the swap meet in middle of May, I believe it was, May 15th, 17th, something like that. And we went and set up a booth there, and we did some outreach there. We'll see how that feedback is when the grant application window opens and see, we like to know where they heard about it from. So the next year I come back, we'll see how it was. So hopefully it was fruitful. And we are open to more ideas. That was one idea that we got last year. So if you have any other ideas that would help us with outreach, we're willing and able to try it out. So you go on to the next slide. So this table here is the commercial harbor craft regulation time frame window. I made this table at the request, I believe, yeah, it was Commissioner McCray, I believe, asked a couple years ago to make something quote unquote simple. Well, this is about as simple as it gets. The compliant dates on the right are what are important, and they differ based off the vessel usage and the year of the engine, et cetera. And so this is a state regulation, and we try to make our grant program a bridge between these compliance timeframes that the state has set and the impacted marine vessels that they impact. So, for example, like a commercial passenger fishing vessel with a 2010 or older engine, that engine's required to be replaced with a Tier 3 or newer engine by December 31st of 26. Well, we aren't allowed to give grant agreements for anything less than 1 year. So at bare minimum, we must have a grant agreement executed prior to December 31st, 2025 in order to fund that project. Well, that's a 1-year project life. And as anybody that's worked with our program, especially on the marine side, they know that the shorter the project life, the less amount of money that we're able to give. And that's why we promote this program, especially with the marine side. Because you can see on the commercial fishing, 2030 is the deadline for when engines have to start being replaced on the commercial fishing side. And, that's 5 years away. Last year was 6, the year before was 7. So the longer project life, the more money we're able to give. So we're hoping to really get this across to the commercial fishermen that have engines and are aware of this commercial harbor craft regulation. And, it's tough, but once the project compliance timeframe is passed, we can't offer grant funds. So you can go to the next slide. It's basically my contact information and my phone number and email, and anybody that has any questions, feel free to fire away.
Great, thanks for the presentation, Mr. McKay. Does anybody from the commission have questions? Commissioner Stedman?
Yes, thank you. So what's the total fund value?
For our grant program as a
Yes.
whole, for this year, we have right around $3 million.
$3 million.
Yeah.
And can you help me understand, you say the longer the project, the more valuable
Yeah.
the outcome. Can you explain that?
Yeah, it's an emission reduction program. So it basically, there's a cost effectiveness level that works in the emissions. So if you have a 1-year project life and that engine produces, let's just say 10 tons of emissions, and you're only doing it for 1 year, and it produces 10 tons per year. Well, that 1 year is worth, say, $50,000. But if you have it 2 years out and it's 10 tons a year, then you have 20 tons of emissions that are tied to that project, and then it becomes $100,000. And then you have 3 years, and that's, and then there's 30 tons of emissions, and so that's where those numbers come into play. The shorter the project life is tied to the emissions created per year off of that vessel's engine.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And can you give an example of the cost of a typical engine, let's say on a commercial vessel?
I mean, they vary because they're anywhere from, in the 200 horsepower range up to 500 horsepower. And the size of the vessels, for instance, we did one he just got the engine in, but we did it in 2023. And so it was a long process that he was working with just a sole proprietor, just a guy out there doing his thing. And we were able to give him right around 60 grand. I think it was like 57,000. And I think the cost to him was somewhere around 80. I think it was like $140,000 total. And we were able to give him about 60, if I recall. And that's it. We offered somebody a grant for almost $80,000 this past year, and he declined it. And he said he might retire. He wasn't sure. So, like I said, it's not that we don't make offers. It's just sometimes the cost to them out of pocket, pulling the boat out of the water, not making them any money while the boat's out of the water, get the engine replaced. The cost of the engine, the material, all that stuff is so expensive that we just say thank you. They say thank you, and they're more than welcome to reapply. We don't turn away applications.
Right. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Commissioner Ford?
Thanks. I'm sorry if I missed it, but I was just wondering, in our narrative of the presentation, there was mention of the priority populations of low-income and disadvantaged communities.
Right.
Could you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, the Santa Barbara Harbor is in what the state calls a low-income community, and that's one of our priority populations where we focus on offering grant dollars. Marine as a whole, because you're the one project type that is being impacted the hardest because of the commercial hovercraft regulation, that we focus on marine. Whether it's a low-income community or not is irrelevant to us on the marine side. Yeah, so there's 3 disadvantaged communities in Santa Barbara County. One is in the west side of the Santa Maria Valley. There's a section in Goleta, and then the San Ynez Chumash Band of Indians has a section that's considered a disadvantaged community. So those are 3 spots. And then there's a large swath of areas that are low-income communities, and that's the next priority for grant funding. But marine, being that you're impacted by a regulation where has a date, we prioritize that.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yeah, thank you again for the presentation. 2 questions. The funding, the $3 million, all comes from the state, is that right?
Generally, yeah, I mean, basically, yes. Yeah, there's different avenues that we get the dollars from, but they're all coming from the state in some capacity.
And then how far in advance do you know, do you know what next year and 2 year, do you know what those numbers are? Or does it come out each year?
We don't, because every year we get something. I mean, it's give or take. There's a ballpark range, like, this grant's probably going to be $700,000 to $900,000. This one's probably going to be, $500,000 to $600,000. But we don't know until we get it. Yeah, the state's real tight-lipped on that stuff. And, we have a grant that is for agriculture projects that hasn't been in the budget the past 2 years. But we had it for 6 years, and then it just stopped. And then it was, so we just have to go year to year. And that's why like last year we had $2.5 million. The year before we had $4 million. This year we have around 3. So it's kind of this. We will have money, we just don't know how much.
Don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner McCray?
Yeah, Mr. McKay, thank you once again for coming here and presenting this to us and giving us a chance to hear it and refresh our memories on it. As I recall, that benefit period, the emissions are counted between the time that the engines go in and the time that particular tier is required by the APCD, or but by CARB.
Yeah,
So it's that window before it's actually required.
right.
So what struck me is that, so you had one person who refused an $80,000 grant and he was going to retire. Does that mean, when the tier is required, his boat is done? And so we just lose that person from the fishing industry or whatever part, of the hovercraft community that he was?
I mean, if he's going to operate it in California and that engine's going to be operated in California, that engine's still going to have that sundown date for that compliance timeline. And if let's just say he does retire and he's done and he has this boat with a Tier 0 1986 engine or whatever it is, well, that engine's got to be replaced within 5 years if it's operating in California. I mean, he could sell it to somebody who fishes in Alaska or you know, in some other place. But if it's operating in California and registered and licensed, then that's what that date applies to.
So his choice was actually, you know, I can just run it as it is until I'm required to do the next tier, and then after that, I'm just going to retire and then sell my boat out of state, and we lose, say he's a fisherman, we lose his catch.
I mean, speculating, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's 100 different avenues that,
Or goes to Mexico or
Yeah.
whatever.
yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, because if he decides to retire, good for him, that sounds great. But if he wants to operate it, he can until that 2030 date.
Yeah.
And it's something that we as an agency don't enforce, it's a state thing, so.
Right.
You know, there's some districts that have MOUs with the state that go to the harbors to enforce the commercial harbor hookup regulation. Like in San Diego, I think they have an MOU with the state of California to go down to the harbor and check things. So,
Great, thank you very much.
yeah.
Super helpful.
Oh, and Mr. Lopez does have some printouts of that compliance timeframe chart, and then some flyers as well. So whether it be for you or handouts for anybody else.
Yeah, for the public, we'll post that in the administration office at the Waterfront. And then if anyone forgets or can't get a hold of Mr. McKay, you can reach out to the Waterfront as well, and we'll put you in touch.
Great.
And I do answer my phone.
Commissioner Cohn, did you have a question? Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that we were trying to get the information out to the waterfront community, and it sounds like you're on top of that, so thank you.
Yeah, and we have somebody going down next week to put flyers on the boards down at the harbor. So
Great.
Which
Great.
are cleaned every 30 days, I believe, or something. Yeah. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's a good idea, especially with the new insurance requirement, the operability clause and everything. So, yeah, I think it's great. So, thanks for the presentation, Mr. McKay. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, moving on to new business item number 4, the review of the waterfront slip permit waitlist policy. This is the second review. Mr. Lopez, can you please read the recommendation for item number 4?
Yes, this is item 4, recommendation that Harbor Commission review the proposed slip waitlist policy changes and recommend staff move forward with finalizing policy for review at a future Harbor Commission meeting.
Great, thank you. Director Wiltshire.
We'll be passing it over to Mr. Aldridge for this one.
Great, thanks, Mr. Aldridge.
All right, good evening, Chair Stanwyck, Harbor Commissioners, and members of the public. I'm Harbor Operations Manager Nathan Aldridge, and tonight I will be presenting a second review on our slip waitlist policy. And tonight's recommendation is that the Harbor Commission review the proposed slip waitlist policy changes and recommend staff finalize revisions for review at a future Harbor Commission meeting. As a reminder, the focus this evening is just on the slip waitlist policy and not on general slip assignments or slip transfers. It can get a little confusing, but this does not involve private slip transfers or work with the yacht brokerage. So to refresh your memory from our May meeting, in 2001, a grand jury report on the Waterfront Department found that the department was well-run and the marinas were well-maintained. But one of its findings, however, was that the waitlist policy, and the waitlist specifically, was not an effective way for a person to obtain a slip. They cited specifics about too many names on the list, no movement, et cetera. And their recommendation was pretty strong. They wanted the waterfront to completely eliminate the ability of a slip permittee to transfer that slip along with the sale of a vessel. And they wanted all slip assignments to come from the waiting list. So eliminating transfers altogether is not a part of this proposal, but staff believes there's room for improvement in the waitlist policy and is looking for feedback before returning to the Commission with a revised policy draft. And so our brief review and our staff's goals for this waitlist policy are threefold. So number one, compliance with our local coastal plan. Number two, fairness. And number three is providing policy that enhances low-cost accessibility for slips. So once again, the threefold goals for this policy is compliance with the local coastal plan, fairness, and then providing a policy that enhances low-cost accessibility for slips. And so in last May's meeting, questions were raised whether our current waitlist policy met our existing local coastal program. and the directives and the needs of our boating public. So both staff and commissioners question whether this current policy promotes this program or affordable berthing opportunities. And a stated priority was to get away from private profit from slip permits received from this wait list. So once again, I cited a recent example of one that was then sold for over $300,000 once it was received for free from the wait list. Opportunity exists to significantly improve this waitlist system by increasing access and accessibility for these waitlisted slips. So some review of the waitlist issues again. The system started decades ago, and it's gotten more and more complicated. So in May, I went into the details of the current system where we have a master waitlist, a submaster waitlist, and a lottery list. And each of these have become more and more complicated and nuanced. And if you look in our Santa Barbara Municipal Code, it stretches to over 40 paragraphs of description to kind of make sense of this. As you may not be surprised, the public is unhappy with this system and these lists, especially since the master and that submaster list are closed to new names, and closed to the public. Having wait lists that are closed to the public does not serve our goal of increasing public access to slip space in our waterfront. So once again, to be clear, tonight's proposal does not affect the general slip transfer policy. It would only affect slips that are acquired from this wait list. A place on these lists must be maintained with a yearly fee. For years, it's been $40. It's now $50. And this wait list fee is non-refundable per the municipal code. And paying this fee does not come with any guarantee or expectation of a slip. It's important to remember that. So the commission expressed strong support for a simple solution to one of our biggest concerns with how this policy is being abused, which is to make all slips received from the wait list non-transferable. So our first proposal this evening is non-transferability. So this simple change would dramatically improve our wait list policy. So any slip received from this wait list could not be transferred between private parties. So what that means is an individual could not sell the rights to the slip permit. There's no transfer fee, no private party cost, and it would immediately lower the barrier of entry for the general public to acquire a slip permit. What this also would do, it would provide absolutely no financial benefit to remaining on a wait list solely in hopes of some future profit or payday if someone came off that list. And it would also, I believe, guarantee that those names who remained on that wait list would be ones who had a genuine interest in using that slip for boating or have an actual interest to use that slip. So as of now, there's a strong financial incentive to remain on the wait list indefinitely. So the first proposal will to make those slips non-transferable. So our second proposal is to consolidate these wait lists. So listening to public feedback, a simple solution would be to eliminate each of these complicated lists and redesign a policy that centers on public access. So once again, the goal would be to increase the likelihood that an individual could get a slip off of this wait list. So that master, that submaster, and the lottery lists could be eliminated, and they could be replaced with one new wait list. So as a point of reference, as it stands, roughly 1 to 2 slips a year are offered to the wait list. Mostly these are smaller in size, 20 to 25 foot. The wait list and submaster list has only 11 names on it. And it's important to consider that currently 5 out of the 11 names on the master and the submaster wait list already have slips in the harbor. One on the list has multiple slips in the harbor. And 10 out of the 11 waitlist names are requesting either an end tie, a 60-foot slip, or a 50-foot slip. And so the third proposal would be to consolidate this wait list and have an annual lottery, similar to what would take place in our currently lottery practice. This would be the most simple and the most fair option. We would host a lottery each year to determine the names that would go on a single list. Every year, individuals who are interested in being on the wait list would submit their name and possibly desired category of slip length. And then the Harbor Commission would oversee a yearly drawing to randomly choose 10 names from the pool of interested applicants. And if a waitlist eligible slip became available in the course of that year, it would be offered to the first name on that list. So as a point of reference for other areas, this is a common mechanism to equitably distribute in-demand public spaces, especially here in California. A comparable example would be access to high-demand state campgrounds or campground spaces, or national park backpacking permits. None of these systems have cumulative 30-year waiting lists to get a permit to hike the John Muir Trail or to backpack or camp to access that public space. That would be unfair. They hold a lottery each year, so everyone has an equal shot of getting a permit. So in the course, if that slip was declined, either it could or could not result in the removal of an applicant's name from the wait list. It would then be offered to the next name on the list. And slips that would be offered to that full list and not accepted would then be held in the Waterfront Department's visitor slip inventory. And at the end of the year, another lottery would take place and a new wait list would be generated. So a few bumpers and barriers to this that would contain it. It would be important to make sure that current slip permittees or spouses or legally registered domestic partners would not be eligible for this lottery, similar to what we have in place already for the commercial slip fishing lottery. And this would be to prevent profiting from the sale of an existing slip just to get a free slip. So if someone acquired a slip from the wait list, they wouldn't turn around and sell their existing slip, and then we'd be in the same boat. So individuals on the current master and sub-master wait list either would or could be added to that first year's pool of names on a one-time basis. And after that first year, if those same individuals wished to apply for any future wait list, they would need to submit their names to the lottery each year like other members of the public. And commercial fishing vessels would remain subject to current commercial fishing wait list policies. So proposed changes here tonight would only affect standard slips. And this last point here is actually a change from my staff report. The commercial fishing wait list would remain in place. And the reason is, after looking this over again, although there are no current names on the commercial fishing wait list, so the list technically does not exist, if you remember the new coup de doc policy that we worked on, excuse me, it calls out for those slips to be non-transferable. And once vacated, they would go to a commercial wait list when they would be turned over. And so keeping a commercial wait list would help for that space and for possibly other designated commercial fishing slips. So in conclusion, designating wait lists and slips as non-transferable immediately reduces private profiting for slips received from public wait list. And holding a yearly wait list lottery would address concerns the wait list is impossible to join and never moves or changes. And both of these revisions would align our policy with the aims of the local coastal plan by increasing public access to the use of our harbor. The process would be fair and dynamic, pardon me, and fixing a long-standing criticism that the closed slip wait lists are inaccessible and impossible to join. So staff recommends that the wait list slips be made non-transferable, to consolidate the 3 existing wait lists into one list, and to hold a wait list lottery each year. So to close, according to the State Lands Commission letter from several years back that I quoted in May, fair and equitable access to the tidelands is a fundamental value of the public trust doctrine, and the city has a duty to protect a people's common heritage in our tidelands. So tonight's recommendation is that the Harbor Commission review the proposed slip wait list policy changes and recommend for staff to finalize revisions for review at a future Harbor Commission meeting. And with that, I am happy to take questions from the Commission.
Great, thanks, Mr. Eldridge. Thanks for the work on that and also kind of providing some proposals and things to fix the policy. With that, do we have any questions from the Commission? Questions, feedback, proposals, suggestions? Commissioner Stedman.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for your presentation, Nathan. One question occurred to me when you were going over the proposed revisions. What determines the order that people will be sitting on the list?
Thank you, Chair Stanwyck and Commissioner Stebbin. For the proposed list of the new waitlist lottery,
Yes.
it would be chosen by random at the Harbor Commission. And my belief is the last time this happened was years ago. There are different ways you can do it. It can be sort of the bingo, draw a ball out, with a number assigned. There are a bunch of online random number generators that can be used, but something that would be a random generator for a name that would be associated with a certain number, and whoever would be drawn first or chosen first would be that first order on the list, and then 2, and then 3, and so on.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McCray.
Nathan, great report. Thank you very much. I have one question, and that is, are you expecting that there would be new applicants and a new list each year so that as we hit the new time to potentially get your name on the list, somebody would go ahead and resubmit, pay their application fee, and that would be it for the year, and then if any slips came up, the list would be prioritized and offered. And then at the next year, people would have to reapply. There's no seniority for people who were on the list last year.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner McCray. That's a great question. One of the proposed ideas would sort of honor the existing list, to use the names that are currently on that list for the first year's lottery and have that in place. And then starting in that second year to do sort of exactly what you just said. Whoever would be interested in applying, put their name in for that lottery. That lottery would be held and ranked from, numbers 1 to 10, for example. There's a chance that a slip could or could not come up that matched the applicant's desired slip length during that year, and say, you would be number 4 or 5 on that list. Maybe you're offered a 20-foot slip, but you have a 40-foot boat. It doesn't work. Say you decline. Just for the sake of argument, 3 months later, a 20-foot slip comes and you take the 20-foot slip. You would be removed from that list, be assigned that waitlist permit. Whoever was after you would move up, and maybe they didn't get an offer before December of that end of the year. During that next year, when there's another lottery, if they were interested in reapplying for that list, they would put their name in, and it wouldn't make them ineligible for any future lists. But if they wished to reapply, they would have to enter into that lottery with however many names from the public desired to apply in each subsequent year. So if someone was on a lottery list and wasn't picked, or they didn't have their name called, so to speak, at the end of the year, that doesn't make them ineligible for future years. They could still apply for the subsequent years as well.
That sounds ultimately fair to me. So just hypothetically, say we have 3 slips that come up of different sizes. The first person on the list gets the pick of all 3, doesn't pick any of them, his boat's too big. Second person on the list picks a slip, and he gets that slip. Then there are 2, and those 2 go through the rest of the list until those slips are exhausted. Is that the kind of the idea?
Yes, Commissioner McCray, that's correct.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Vice Chair Ford.
Thanks. Oh, so to clarify, there's just one list, right? There aren't multiple lists for each size of slip.
Correct. And so the proposal, I think, is flexible in talking with staff and listening to the public. The way it's currently written, with the 3 separate and distinct wait lists, you have to list a desired slip length, and you're penalized by being taken off the list if a slip comes to that length that you decline. But if a slip comes up that is a length that you're not looking for, and you move on and say, I don't want the slip, you wouldn't be taken off the list. I think in some ways there's some benefit to being flexible by either having no desired slip length and just letting somebody choose depending on that. The idea to have a desired slip length as part of the list is in some ways just a benefit for the incentive of the department to see sort of if they have a boat and they're ready to go. As part of our municipal code, as it currently stands in our general slip assignment policy, an individual or slip permittee has 90 days upon acceptance of a slip permit or paperwork being completed to put a vessel in that slip. So I can see a world where somebody is ready to go. Either they're looking at a couple different boats and their name gets called. They haven't purchased the boat but ready to move and start that process. They could be ready to purchase a boat or, make it happen in that time. Or it's geared towards individuals, I think, who do have a boat and they're ready to go, And ideally, that it gives them a little bit of flexibility. So if they're in the market for a variety of different types of vessels, if they had an option that Commissioner McRae mentioned where maybe a 20-foot and a 30-foot slip were available, they have some flexibility on to which one they might choose if they were offered a slip.
That's great, and you answered a couple of my questions with your response, so thanks. Are there any requirements then to get on the slip other than pay the application fee? To get on the list?
Yeah, so Vice Chair Ford, to understand your question right now, in the proposed wait list policy, would there be any requirements to put the name on the wait list or in the lottery list? And the answer would be no. Anybody
Right.
can, as long as they are not a current slip permittee.
Right.
Or the spouse or registered domestic partner of a current slip permittee.
Perfect, thank you. Great presentation.
Commissioner Cohn.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I know everyone's been working on this, and it is a worthy goal. I have several questions. I just want to know, first of all, did we inform the current wait list members that this was going to be an agenda item today?
Commissioner Cohen, we kind of take standard practice with the way we advertise and post our meetings. I mean, it's a California law to post it specifically. So the answer is no, not specifically, but we do everything we do with any other agenda item. We try not to pick any specific group and specifically message meetings to them. We just kind of message meetings the way that we do always, which is posting them physically on marine gates, posting them online. Anybody who's on the Harbor Commission mailer will receive the agenda, receive staff reports and all that information. And so that's sort of deemed a sufficient advertising without like hand selecting specific groups, because we have a number of agenda items, and
Sure.
what's to say we shouldn't reach out to every group.
I understand. I understand the complication. I just wanted to understand if they had any idea that this conversation was happening. Do you know on average how long the people that have been waiting on that list have been waiting?
Yeah, Commissioner Cohen, that's another great question. So when my understanding from sort of anecdotal conversations with prior staff is that this wait list policy, there used to be hundreds of names on this wait list, and in the 1990s, there was that made the decision to sort of cap this, and it was sort of capped at a sort of arbitrary number. I'm not exactly sure how much what they ended up to filling that down. It's slowly whittled itself down over the years, but the names of those individuals that I mentioned, the 11 who remained on this list, have been on for decades. And like I said, of those 11, I think at least 5 or 6 of them are current slip permittees.
So for decades, they've been paying to stay on this list.
That's correct.
Okay.
I think one other key piece of information that Nathan didn't mention is I believe that all of the people on the wait list have been offered multiple slips and have declined them. So they are really intending to wait for the larger and larger slips, and so they have literally had multiple opportunities to take a slip off the wait list, and they still remain on there.
I understand. So in discussing this a little bit further, my understanding was that if there is a short-term transfer right after someone purchases, that their transfer fees are higher than normal. Is that the case?
Commissioner Cohen, can you repeat your question again?
Is it my understanding that when there is a transfer in a short-term situation that there's the transfer fees are higher than normal? And I'm just wondering, after that question, have we looked at what the financial implications would be of losing those transfer fees?
Yeah, Commissioner Cohen, that's a great question. That was discussed as part of our rate and fee structure too. I don't have those numbers offhand to give you right now, but there is a disincentive to selling that slip or trying to transfer that received off of a wait list or any other slip right now, depending upon when that transaction does place. So it tries to disincentive for lack of a better term, the flipping of that slip.
Yes.
And if there is a wait of a year, 3 years, or 5 years, that number does go down.
Okay.
But the transfers that we end up getting off of the SWIP wait list, as I mentioned before, it tends to be 1 to 2 a year, and most of them are small, they're 20, 25s. I believe maybe 2 years ago, we had a 50-foot slip, and that was immediately flipped. But I think the slip permittee was probably happy to pay whatever transfer penalty as long as, they were
Profiting.
making $350,000,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I understand. So I just am wondering if we looked at what the financial implications would be, because in the scenario we're talking about, we would be losing as a harbor some ability to collect transfer fees. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, that's correct, because it would essentially make waitlisted slip permanently waitlisted slip. So it is a financial hit to the Waterfront Department. Again, we're talking 1 or 2 a year. It's a pretty nominal amount of dollars, but we look at it from the point of view where this is one of those choices where it's great that we're a public harbor. We're not necessarily chasing the dollar. This is a big fix in the direction of accessibility, and I think it's a good trade-off. Down the road, we can look at other ways to make that revenue neutral, but if you looked at any given year, the transfer fees on a 20, 25, 30-foot slip, 1 or 2 of them, it's in the range of, $10,000, so a pretty nominal amount of money compared to the size of our budget.
Okay. Just making sure that we looked at the financial impacts of doing something like this. I mean, I see where we're going, and I understand this. I do feel like, especially when you put those numbers in front of us of a $300,000 slip and making it, something that we basically just lottery off to someone, I don't know that it really greatly impacts accessibility. While one person is obviously going to be the winner in that scenario, there are going to be a lot of losers. So I just didn't know if there was, a discussion of alternate methods to increase, the access, because ultimately I feel like this is a supply problem and not a policy problem. It's people wanting to have access to slips, wanting to have access to the harbor. And I don't know that you ever make boating 100% accessible. I mean, I completely understand backpacking and rafting permits. That's my world. But those are much more less expensive ventures than, buying a boat and taking care of it for a long, long time. So those are my concerns.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Cohen. And also, too, just on that, because I know that the slip transfer revenue is a big part of the waterfront's budget. And I was wondering, is there any intent to, cap these amounts of slips going forward? Or is it just so, de minimis right now that there's going to be such few going forward?
Yeah, Chair Sandbeck, that's a great question. Also, once again, bringing back to sort of clarifying one of the first slides, this does not affect our slip transfer policy. And 99% of those slips that change hands or that we process on the month-to-month are going to be unaffected by this policy. This, to me, is just a sort of egregious violation of public space or a wait list where someone should be using it for boating that hangs on to it sort of like a lottery ticket, and then 20 years later, like I say, cashes in. So for staff, I think it's sort of low-hanging fruit in a way for us to be able to clean up something and create, to get to Commissioner Cohen's point, slowly by slowly add some other slips that, stay waitlisted slips that are non-transferable that, the department can use and an individual can get into boating where they don't necessarily have to buy a, 40-foot boat and a slip sort of on that gray market in order to get into boating.
Great, thanks.
And Chair Stanwyck, I think we can kind of monitor this over time.
Sure.
It'll happen so slowly that, I mean, if we get to a position in 10 years where we are waitlisting off a dozen slips, that would be, I think, a good thing for the harbor, but it's really hard to see it even moving that quickly. And so it would be something to kind of try for a period of a few years and revisit it at Harbor Commission when we see how it goes.
Great, thanks. Commissioner Stedman.
Yes, thank you again, Nathan. With the mandatory vessel insurance policy taking effect in January, does staff have some speculative number on how many new slips might become available, especially from people who aren't able to meet that mandatory requirement?
The short answer is no. I mean, we don't even know how many people have vessel insurance at the moment, and so we got kind of a long runway to figure that out. My guess is that if people they'll manage their slip the conventional way. And so if somebody waits until they're actually terminated, then that would be a situation that we would receive that slip back as the waterfront. But they have all the opportunity in the world between now and then to divest themselves of that slip in the conventional ways. So.
Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes, thank you again for that presentation. I think there's a lot of thought, and I like a lot of the ideas that are coming out of it. I guess one question I had, and I may have asked this in May, forgive me if I did, but have you all fully vetted any legal concerns for the people that are on the existing list and make sure they weren't made any? I know in the beginning you alluded there were no promises, no guarantees, but has that been run past the city attorney to make sure there were no promises made 40 years on a piece of handwritten paper that they may have? Or like, how comfortable do we feel? Is there concern of pushback from those on the list if we get rid of it?
Yeah, Commissioner Anderson, great question. If the proposal moves forward, I can very directly answer that question to the city attorney's office. I think the problem is that type of sort of policy is what we're trying to increasingly move away from. You know, when 40 to 50 years ago, people could get slips on a handshake because you knew so and so, and you got moved up to the top of the list, because your buddy had a slip, and I think that that type of policy makes it more and more difficult to do what we're doing now. And I think the idea of trying to make our policy equitable and fair and transparent, and more just accessible too, I think is overwhelmingly supported by the public. And the complaints I get and the frustrations from people walking around and saying, hey, I'd love to get a slip. Well, what is the deal with the wait list? Why can't I put my name on the wait list? It's hard to defend, why and how. And so when I explain to them something like this proposal, I say, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I would like to finally have a chance to, start boating. And, to combine that with, Commissioner Stedman's question about sort of the insurance question or policy, if we do have boats that have been sitting in a slip for, 20 years and, they're derelict or they're not being taken care of or as well loved as they once were, and this may be a push for someone to say, hey, it's time for me to move on and either sell the boat or give the slip to someone else who would be able to use that. I think that's wonderful. I think it's important to give people options to that. And this is not forcing anyone who has a slip in order to sell their slip, but just looking at our wait list policy and a way to sort of clean that up and decrease the chances for someone who's new to boating or in the public who's been kind of waiting and may not have $400,000 to splash on a brand new boat, but may be able to get a well-used boat and be able to pay the monthly slip fees, which, thankfully, as the commission knows, are fairly reasonable, from the rest of Southern California too. And I think that's by design, and something's been discussed here.
And to add, just going forward, if we do go forward with this, just like the new policy, being on a wait list in no way entitles anybody to receiving a slip at any given time. And so that'll be in the same situation if we had a yearly lottery. If we take 8 or 10 names, we could give out 0 slips, we could give out all 10, but it doesn't entitle anybody to guaranteed access to a slip.
Commissioner McCray?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, my assumption here, and I could be wrong, is that the intent is if somebody were to come off of the lottery, not the new lottery, the annual lottery, and have the opportunity to get a slip that is much larger than any boat he currently has, and he's got 90 days to fill it, but he's looking at maybe he's trying to figure out how he's going to buy a $900,000 boat that actually fits the slip, and he really wants to do it. But he's got a 12-foot skiff, and the 90 days is approaching. Could he throw the 12-footer in there and just pay the fee?
Yeah, Commissioner McCray, it's a fantastic question. And, part of our slip rules and regulations is that a vessel must occupy 80% of the slip space. We do have some forgiveness and overhang if a vessel exceeds the length. It varies depending upon slip length. Generally, in most of the slips, it's about 3 feet. So if you have a 28-foot boat and you put it in a 30-foot slip, that's fine. If you have a 32-foot boat in a 30-foot slip, generally that's okay too. Sometimes it's a game of inches. If you've talk to people who, when we're trying to put a boat into a slip, but that it needs to be an appropriately sized vessel for that slip. And in that example of, someone who would be entering in a wait list and they have a, 12-foot skiff and they're hoping to get a 20-foot slip, knowing they would have no need or desire or incentive to take that 50 because at the end of the day, when they were finished with it, they couldn't sell that. It would be non-transferable, so that would just remain in the waterfront. So the incentive and the idea with this is to have an appropriately sized slip for someone who's waiting to use that to be an active boater.
Thank you. I think that's important for people to know. They got to get a boat just 90% of the slip rating within those 90 days if they're going to accept that slip off the, yeah. The other thing is that, it sounds like there's two different decision points in this. One is to move forward with this policy that's being developed. And the other has to do with the commercial fishing slips. And I'm hoping that those two are separate decision points for us ultimately, that we're not trying to decide both policies at the same time because they are so potentially so different.
Yeah, thank you again for bringing that up to clarify, Commissioner McRae. Once again, in the proposal here, the commercial slip waitlist policy would be unaffected and it would remain in place. And once again, that's due to our new coup de doc policies. And even though that list, like I said, for all intents and purposes does not exist, there are no names on that list. Having a list that we can have and pretty much create or generate, I think would be helpful for the commercial fishermen going into the future, especially for that coup de doc space. So commercial fishing is unaffected by this policy.
Thank you for that.
Vice Chair Ford.
Thanks. Well, as the chair of the strategic planning work group, I'm really in favor of this, and this is more of a comment. I'm very glad to hear we're not chasing a dollar, and also I appreciate that we're cleaning up language and policy, but I just want to remind our fellow commissioners that this new suggestion, this policy suggestion is very much in line with the local coastal plan, and this is the guiding document for all of our conversations.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Cohen.
Thank you. So I just wanted to I'm just wondering if we did talk to a business advisor with the city when we went over this, and legal, just to confirm, I agree with Commissioner Anderson that those 2 points, the financial impacts and the possible legal impacts of people who've been on a list for a very long time, that those have been already discussed with the city.
Yeah, just to be clear with the commission, the way that we've handled these and with vessel insurance is we've brought them to you kind of in stages. And so this is really a conceptual presentation. So what our next step is essentially bringing redlined language back to you. That's typically the point when we engage the attorneys, when we're ready. If this is something that the Harbor Commission wants to move forward with, we'll move to that stage. If not, then we'll go a different direction. But it's kind of worked really well bringing it to us in kind of conceptual stages. And so if the Harbor Commission is in favor of moving forward with this, Nathan and myself will get back to work and kind of spend the next month or so ironing that out, bringing the attorneys in, and the product that we bring to you next is a literal red line document of the municipal code to review that has been proofed and read by the attorneys.
So it has not been reviewed with a business manager or legal at the city. Is that my understanding?
By business manager, we have an internal business manager in the waterfront, and they're certainly aware of this. The financial impacts are fairly minor, so even $30, $40 a year for a reasonable amount of time to expect 5-10 years, it's a few $100s. So we're happy to evaluate that further with the attorney on the next phase. But if we can get through kind of conceptual approval, that would be this meeting's task.
So just so I understand, the next step would be to go in and would you bring in, is this the type of project where you would want to bring in a work group so that you're working with commissioners and
I don't necessarily think we need it. We've kind of handled the nuts and bolts at the Harbor Commission level. The next stage would be actually just redlining a municipal code, which is very much a staff and attorney task, and then we would bring that back to the Harbor Commission for review.
It's just been my experience, having been here not as long as a lot of the commissioners, I'm way over here on the end, but when we try to address some of these policies that have been in place for a very, very long time, and they haven't, we haven't gotten full buy-in from the community, especially the people on the wait list, that it kind of blows up. And I would rather that we not have that happen. So I'm just wondering if we brought in commissioners and we did some more public outreach to make sure that this is the right direction, if that's a possibility, and maybe it's not.
I can understand where you're going. I don't know if it's necessarily needed in this case. I mean, we'll have had 3 public meetings that have been advertised by the time we're through Harbor Commission. It will also go to Ordinance Committee and Council for a relatively small policy update of municipal code. And so I think the general public has been very supportive of this, and Harbor Commission has been very supportive of it. The group that it directly impacts is very small. And so as we get down the process, staff can reach out to them directly and they can participate in the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Cohen. Mr. Lopez, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do have one speaker slip submitted, Jamie Diamond, and I don't see any current hands raised. Chair
Okay.
Stanwyck.
Hi, Ms. Diamond.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. I'm Jamie Diamond, mom to a commercial fisherman. The presentation, as it was earlier, had mentioned some possible changes to the commercial fishing policy, but after listening to what was said, I now actually have more questions. My son, who is 18 years old and a new entrant to the commercial lobster fishery, was able to get a lobster boat last year. And at that point, we reached out to the waterfront, said we'd like to be on a lottery list or a wait list for a commercial slip. I received an email back saying we do not have a designated commercial fishing slip waiting list, but we have a general waiting list that's a lottery, and it's formed by adding names. There's a monthly fee and a security deposit. But what I'm hearing tonight is that there is a commercial list and there's nobody on it, which my son would be on it. He didn't get on the other one because in addition to having to find a slip elsewhere and pay the rent there, he would also be paying a monthly fee and the security deposit. So it diverges from what the intent of this item is, especially since the change on that last bullet from the non-transferability. I recognize that, but I just like to flag that as confusion. That was from an email that I received back from Waterfront staff. And so I pulled that up after hearing what was said. In general, as somebody who advocates for accessibility to our waterfront for a variety of users, whether it's a small skiff user or a larger vessel, I really support the non-transferability of waitlist slips. I believe that somebody getting a slip from the waitlist and then being able to turn a profit on it, it doesn't sit well, especially when it comes to a public resource. So I strongly support that. And then what is a waitlist eligible slip? So how does a slip become waitlist eligible? And it may have been done at the presentation earlier this year. I apologize. I didn't follow that. But what creates or constitutes a waitlist eligible slip? And then I appreciate the clarification on the usage of this, like the percentage usage of the slip, that it's up to 80%, because in my mind, when you were saying go down the list, somebody who has a 20-foot vessel gets offered a 60-foot slip, and they're like, hey, I'd love all that room, that sounds great, I'll take it, and they're taking slips that other vessels will have a harder time getting access to. So thank you for clarifying that.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Diamond. Just to clarify one of the public comment question, the waitlist eligible slip, can you guys just kind of elaborate on that real quick?
Yeah, Chair Stanwyck, there's really very few ways that a slip ends up on the wait list. Essentially, a slip permit holder can violate any terms of their slip permit, and we can bring it to termination. If a slip is terminated, it comes back to the waterfront, and then we would put that to the wait list. If somebody passes away and has no other slip permittee or listed on file, and those are generally the ways that slips come back to the wait list.
Great, thanks. Mr. Lopez, do we have any other public commenters online in the queue?
There are no other speaker slips and no hands raised, Chair Stanwyck. Oh, excuse me, there's one hand raised. Robert Vatcher. You are unmuted and can go ahead.
Mr. Vatcher, yep, go ahead. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Hi there. I am on the slip waiting list. I've been there since the early 2000s. I got on there when I was 50 years old. I'm on the 60-foot list. I'm number 2 right now. So you can see it's been quite some time. I understand your need to go forward with some kind of change. However, there's only 11 people on the master and submaster right now at an attrition rate of 2 to 4 slips per year. That list is going to be gone in short order. And I understand your need to make people not monetize the thing, and you want long-term users. However, there is also a larger transfer fee that goes along with being given a slip. I also would ask that most of these people that are in position to be on this list now have gotten quite a bit older over the years, and so their needs for 50 or 60 may not be quite 50 or 60 foot of vessel. And so wondering that even if we do get this non-transferable slip off this, if that's what you indeed do with this, my suggestion is just leave it alone, let it go away, and then make the lotteries as you are anticipating. By the time you get the kinks worked out, this list will be next to gone or gone. And so, but otherwise, if you don't, make these slips, although they will most likely be non-transferable, make them exchangeable. And not just comparable exchangeable. Somebody who gets a 60-foot slip maybe does not want a 50-foot boat, which is comparable, because I've done 50 to 60-foot exchanges in the past. I started with a 50 P2, one P2, and then they built all the extension. They gave away close to 80 boats off 80 slips.
Oh, Mr. Vatcher, that was 2 minutes. You can have another 2 minutes if you'd like. Okay.
Okay, I'm just saying that a lot of people that now have monetized, not all of them have. There's many people that got those original extra, when they did the extension, they're still there. They are still boaters, still in the same slip. Others have moved on and monetized that. And none of those people suffered the penalty of non-transferability. And these are all people off this master and submaster. So you've started a long-term custom of doing something that is just about through attrition gone. And so why not just let it go away under the same tenets that it's been operating for these 25 years, 30 years that it's been in place, and then make a new plan according to coastal policy, and that's just what I have to say. I appreciate your help.
Great, thank you, Mr. Vatcher. Okay, looks like we don't have any other questions, so we can move on to kind of a discussion phase. And just for myself, speaking from experience, when I moved to Santa Barbara, I purchased a boat in Santa Barbara Harbor. I purchased the rights to the slip. The whole wait list and sub-wait list and lottery process was extremely confusing for me. And what I didn't realize is that most people, pretty much almost everybody, are ones to purchase the boat slip combo from a normal one of our brokers of the harbor, like Chandler or Seacoast or whatnot. It was very simple. It was very easy. It was a very transparent process. The whole wait list is, to me, is pretty confusing. We heard from the waterfront really the speculative nature of this, which, to me, that's what it sounds like. It seems like a lot of times people just end up turning around and swapping these for cash. And, for me, I really like the proposals. I really like the solutions. I think they're good, creative, and ultimately will better serve everybody trying to do what the harbor and the waterfront is, to either boat recreationally or commercially. So that's kind of my opinion on it. With that, does anybody have any other discussions? Yeah, Commissioner Stedman?
One quick point. Nathan, you made the point more than once that the commercial fishing waitlist policy and its provisions would stay in place, but yet in the memorandum it says the current commercial fishing waitlist slip policy would be eliminated. So can you clear that contradiction up?
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you once again, Commissioner Stedman. I wanted to be clear, to try to clear up the confusion in the beginning of this presentation. So after that, I had submitted that staff report, I basically caught the fact that by doing that, it would hamstring our new coup d'etat policy and our desire to create those 9 new slip spaces and make those as non-transferable, and they would end up going to the commercial fishing slip wait list. And so realizing I wouldn't want to eliminate the concept of a commercial fishing wait list if we've already have some good policy we created in order to create those slips that would be waitlisted slips. And so realizing that it's too late to change the staff policy, I wanted to try to clarify that tonight.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Mr. Lopez, can you please read the recommendation for number 4?
Yes, the recommendation is that Harbor Commission review the proposed slip waitlist policy changes and recommend staff move forward with finalizing policy for review at a future Harbor Commission meeting.
Great, thank you. So that if there's no questions or comments, a motion would be in order at this time.
So moved.
Seconded.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Lopez, can you please do a vote for us?
Yes, this is a motion by Commissioner McCray, seconded by Commissioner Stedman to approve the staff recommendation. Commissioner Cohen?
I'm going to abstain.
Commissioner Ford?
Aye.
Commissioner McCray?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson? Is absent, excuse me. Commissioner Stedman?
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
And Chair Stanwyck.
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Cohen abstaining and Commissioner Nelson absent.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's move on to item number 5 of new business, the annual cruise ship program review. Mr. Lopez, can you please read the recommendation for item number 5 of new business?
Yes, this is item 5. Recommendation that Harbor Commission receive a presentation from staff reviewing the 2024-2025 cruise ship program, including data on visiting vessels, revenues, and compliance with recently adopted cruise ship program improvements.
Great, thank you. Turning it over to the waterfront.
Yeah, we'll have Miss Angela Rodriguez doing this tonight. She's kind of the czar of our cruise ship program.
Great, thanks, Ms. Rodriguez.
Hello and good evening, Harbor Commission and members of the public. I'm Angela Rodriguez, Administrative Analyst 3 for the Waterfront Department, as well as the Cruise Ship Program Coordinator. Tonight, we'll be presenting on the cruise ship program and the efforts over the past year to implement the newly adopted cruise ship program improvements. So let's begin. I'll go ahead and skip this one since Nico just read it. Okay, as a quick refresher, here's a little history of the cruise ship program in Santa Barbara. The program started in 2002 and is managed by the Waterfront Department. Since the start of the program, the Waterfront Department has hosted over 250 cruise ship calls. The Waterfront Department schedules the cruise ship visits during non-peak business seasons, and therefore it does not schedule any cruise ship visits from Memorial Weekend through Labor Day. This is meant to avoid the summer months when the city is more impacted by non-cruise ship visitors. Additionally, cruise ship calls are scheduled anywhere between 12 to 36 months in advance. The Waterfront Department website, where the cruise ship schedule is available, is shown on the screen and gets updated before each cruise ship season. The cruise ship website also has contact information for various cruise lines that visit Santa Barbara, as well as the new cruise ship database, which will be addressed later in this presentation. Now here's a little insight on how the cruise ship program works on the day of the cruise ship visit. The ship anchors approximately 1 mile offshore and tenders ferry passengers to Santa Barbara Landing. Santa Barbara Landing is an approved facility through the U.S. Coast Guard and creates a secure area for the passengers to disembark. Once the passengers are landside, they are greeted by volunteer ambassadors from the Chamber of Commerce who provide them with a wealth of knowledge about the city, along with information about where they can eat, shop, see some of the famous attractions that Santa Barbara has to offer. Some guests have prearranged tours, but many of the guests are happy to take a tour of the city on their own by walking or taking advantage of the shuttles provided by the Waterfront Department. In addition to the shuttles that takes guests into the city, the Waterfront Department also provides security and, for larger ships, additional restrooms. To run this program, the Waterfront Department charges $15 per passenger. The Waterfront Department receives these funds per passenger regardless if the passenger gets off the ship or not. Here's a quick and condensed recap of the history of the cruise ship subcommittee, which is what brings us here tonight. The process started after COVID in 2022 when the community began returning to tourism and Santa Barbara was due to begin receiving cruise ship visits. Before the first post-COVID cruise ship visit, the Waterfront Department presented a cruise ship program review to the Harbor Commission and City Council. After the cruise ship visits returned, there was increased public interest regarding the impacts of cruise ships to Santa Barbara. This was due to the increased number of visits scheduled in 2022, which was 30 cruise ships. The increased public interest prompted Harbor Commission to form the Cruise Ship Subcommittee on April 21st, 2022. As a result, the Cruise Ship Subcommittee embarked on a 2-year process to discuss environmental, social, and economic impacts of the cruise ship program in the Santa Barbara. The meetings were well-attended public meetings with presentations from the Air Pollution Control District, Cruise Line International Association, U.S. Coast Guard, Santa Barbara Channel Keeper, Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary, Visit Santa Barbara, and the Chamber of Commerce. At the end of the 2-year process, Harbor Commission and City Council heard presentations from the Waterfront Department and voted to adopt the following 20 cruise ship program improvements. Before I go into the details about the adopted cruise ship program improvements, here's a quick look at the number of cruise ship visits each year from 2013 to 2028. Now, here we are today with the status update on the 20 cruise ship program improvements adopted by Harbor Commission and City Council. Starting with number 1, requesting that all cruise ships visiting Santa Barbara be equipped with advanced wastewater treatment systems. All cruise ships that visited in fall 2024 and spring 2025 were equipped with advanced wastewater treatment systems. In addition, all ships on the schedule going forward are also equipped with this technology. Recommendation number 2 was to continue the local requirement of no discharges of any kind within 12 nautical miles of Santa Barbara. This requirement was continued, but also added to the letter of understanding, which is now sent to the ship during the reservation process, which is about 2 to 3 years in advance of the visit. Recommendation number 3 was regarding vessel speed and ensuring cruise ships slow to 10 knots or less within the Santa Barbara vessel speed reduction zone between May 1st and December 15th. There was already a requirement for vessels to slow their speed when in Santa Barbara. However, the requirement language now aligns with the Blue Whales, Blue Skies program and includes the recommended times of the year when vessels should slow to 10 knots. Additionally, the new language was also added to the letter of understanding, while it was previously only stated on the captain's declaration. Recommendation number 4 was regarding scheduling, which formalized an existing practice of not scheduling any cruise ship visits from Memorial Day weekend to Labor Day, or any weekends throughout the year. Any questions so far? Okay, recommendation 5 was also to continue a practice which was recommended that the Waterfront Department work with local businesses who offer services and excursions to cruise ship passengers. Although this practice is continued, it is becoming more difficult to establish new connections between local businesses and cruise ships with fewer visits. Recommendation number 6 and number 7, also regarding the establishment of partnerships between visiting cruise ships and local seafood suppliers and educational institutions, has been difficult to implement, as there are currently not enough visiting cruise ships to effectively set up programs such as these. Recommendations 8, 9, and 10 are all regarding cruise ship fees. The Waterfront Department increased the per passenger fee as recommended, for passenger fees, minimum passenger fee, and cancellation fees in FY 2023. However, the Waterfront Department also recently increased the cancellation fee for larger ships, which became effective this month on July 1st. Moving on to recommendation number 11 regarding the approval process. It is an existing practice that is being continued. The letter of understanding is also now sent to the ship during the approval process 2 to 3 years in advance of the visit. Recommendation 12 was to establish a publicly available database regarding cruise ship statistics and technologies. The cruise ship database is now available on the cruise ship program website for public review. It is the intent of the Waterfront Department to continue to update and add to this database each cruise ship season and as additional information becomes available. I will bring up the database for review at the end of this presentation as well. Recommendation number 13 was to ensure that there would be periodic reviews to the cruise ship program, which brings me here in front of you all tonight. Recommendation 14 was to evaluate the need for a licensed ship pilot to assist visiting cruise ships. This recommendation was not implemented as staff worked with the U.S. Coast Guard to evaluate the need for a licensed pilot aboard ships and determined it was not necessary in the Santa Barbara Channel. Recommendation 15 was to request ships visiting Santa Barbara to consider at-anchor emissions, control systems, when such technologies become commercially feasible. This recommendation is difficult to implement as it is not a measurable metric since ships currently use various methods to reduce air emissions, and the recommended technology is not yet commercially feasible for all ships. Moving on to recommendation 16, which was to establish a limit of 20 cruise ship visits per year. This recommendation has been implemented as there were 13 cruise ship visits in 2024 and 11 scheduled for all of 2025. Additionally, there are less than 20 cruise ship visits scheduled in 2026, 2027, and 2028. Recommendation number 17 was to prioritize cruise ships without scrubber technology or with closed-loop scrubber technology. This has not been implemented as there has not yet been a need to prioritize ships while under the 20 cruise ship per year limit. However, this would be difficult to prioritize as it would be the Waterfront Department preference to defer to the regulatory agencies that govern when various technologies that can and can't be used during anchoring. Recommendation 18 is very similar to that and has to do with prioritizing cruise ships with plug-in or shore power connectivity. This one is also hard to prioritize, but there hasn't been an instance to have to prioritize yet. Recommendation number 19 was to prioritize cruise ships with exemplary environmental compliance records. The Waterfront Department has not implemented this recommendation while still being under the cap, as there has not been a need to prioritize ships yet. However, this recommendation will likely require more evaluation. Recommendation number 20, the last one, was to maintain the cruise ship work group. However, it has been dissolved by Harbor Commission to handle these discussions at the Harbor Commission level. And now here's a look at the current cruise ship database and the information that has been compiled so far. So the first top half, that's basically what we're talking about that we reviewed in the past year so far, where the bottom half is what's coming up in the fall. So here, I can make this a little bit bigger. Oops. Nico's, sorry. I'm trying to find the Zoom here, it's blocked. There we go, sorry about that. Okay, hopefully people can see that a little bit better. So on this spreadsheet here, it basically goes over some of the recommendations that we were supposed to be tracking, which includes the vessel information regarding shore power connectivity, the scrubber types, as well as we were asked to also look into the small ships versus the larger ships and the economical impact. So I put the revenue to the Waterfront Department over in the last column there. The bottom one shows all the estimates, but those are not the exact numbers of passengers that we may or may not receive. So with this, I am now open for questions to the Harbor Commission.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Do we have any questions from the commission? Vice Chair Ford?
Thanks. I don't see it. It seemed like when you made it bigger, the dates disappeared.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me.
That's all I want to see. Thanks.
Any other questions from the commission? Regarding the, Commissioner Stedman?
Is there a fall schedule?
This is the
I
fall
mean, not
one.
the fall, spring?
We do have one, but that one's not confirmed with all the cruise ships just yet. So sometimes they do cancel, where this one's a little bit more confirmed since it's coming up.
Got it. Thanks.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yeah, let's see here. Thank you for putting this together. This is what I was looking for on the website. Is this available online, or it is?
Yes, this is on the cruise ship visit website. It's under the.
Is it where all the visits are listed?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's very helpful. I haven't seen that yet. It's nice to see that. I guess my question is, so the revenues are down a little bit from what they were prior to the policy, right? Do we think that is because, do you think that has anything to do with our policy, or just in general, there's less interest right now in visiting? Have we lost any cruise lines, or any cruise lines that are not coming that used to?
It's a great question. We reached out to the cruise lines about a month ago to kind of touch base on that, to get an idea about demand and trying to figure out years to come. In pretty clear terms, they let us know that we were kind of, the process definitely changed the way that they were doing business with us. And so that they were kind of less, I mean, they have to book these and schedule them so far in advance. And so they kind of didn't necessarily feel that sense of reliability. So they indicated that our cruise ship numbers were down because of our policy, not because of like industry demand.
Thank you. I think that's it from me right now.
Commissioner McCray?
Yeah, so I'm looking at this list. Looks like there were actually 6 different parent companies that were using the harbor, and now we're down to just 1. This is a big change. We have 1 company that's willing to work with us at this point.
That's correct.
Have we received any feedback from the other companies in that respect? Like why they're not showing up?
We met with CLIA, which is Cruise Lines International. It's like a member agency that most of these parent and cruise companies are members of. They kind of, yeah, they're a member agency, and so we met with them with some of those questions too. And yeah, it was pretty clear that they kind of heard our process and would, if they were to continue the business in the way that they were prior to our policy, they would need some more assurances and reliability on the terms of how we are or not going to receive cruise ships. So I think they made some business decisions based on our process and policy.
Great. Thanks for the clarity on that. Mr. Lopez, do we have any public comment on this, either online or speaker slip submitted?
We do. We have 2 speaker slips submitted and 3 hands raised. So we can start with the speaker slips.
Sure. Yep, start with the speaker slips.
Okay. So first up is Nate Irwin.
Great, thanks. Mr. Irwin, we have 2 minutes.
Okay, is there any chance that I could have 2 minutes and 30 seconds? I'm excited to see this database. Is that a possibility?
Sure, yes.
Thank you so much. Hello, Commissioners, Chair. My name is Nate Irwin. I'm here on behalf of Santa Barbara Channel Keeper. I want to begin by thanking the Waterfront Department staff, the Harbor Commission, the City Council, and most importantly, the community for all of the time, energy, and dedication that has gone into strengthening our cruise ship program. Our community has consistently shown a strong commitment to protecting our coastline and the channel. That's why the changes adopted by the City Council last year received such widespread public support. The motion outlined a clear path forward, limiting cruise ship visits, enhancing environmental protections, and prioritizing ships that demonstrate the strongest commitments to protective technologies and best practices. We fully support the Waterfront staff's ongoing efforts to implement these changes, and it's so exciting to see this foundation being built with this publicly accessible database. I mean, that is really important. And there are some concerns that we have. Some of the directives, such as prioritizing ships with strong environmental compliance records, investigating the use of scrubbers and what the environmental impacts of that are, smaller vessels, cleaner fuels. It seems as though they have not been fully analyzed or adopted, either due to the current number of ships, which we heard, or other reasons. And these environmental standards should apply to all cruise ships, not only when the cap is reaching 20. There has been a strong and consistent agreement among the community, City Council, this commission, that every ship should be evaluated against clear environmental criteria, regardless of when it's being booked. Evaluating and tracking compliance records and onboard technologies is essential to maintaining a transparent and effective program. While we recognize that implementation may be complex, it's both necessary and achievable. And we're concerned by the lack of movement in this area, but this is a really great first step moving towards that direction. And I just want to finish by saying that recommendations 1 and 3 on slide number 7, it still says requests, and what the motion was from council was require. And that was also in the staff report as require. So it'd be great if we could change that. And we're here to support staff in doing this, and we remain committed to doing so. And thank you for your time and the continuing work that you all have done to make this program great. So thank you so much.
Great, yeah, thank you for the public comment. Mr. Lopez, do we have another speaker slip?
Yes, we have Jamie Diamond.
Ms. Diamond, yep, you have 2 minutes.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. I'm Jamie Diamond, General Manager and CEO for Santa Barbara Landing, the facility that receives the cruise ships when they come to visit Santa Barbara. After meeting with representatives from the cruise ship lines, what Mr. Wiltshire alluded to is very much so the reason why we have less ships right now. And one thing I want to point out is, and I stated this multiple times throughout the subcommittee meetings, when ships come to Santa Barbara, we do have more control over how they behave or what they do when they are traveling through our channel versus when they pass through. If they aren't coming to us, there's nothing holding them to any better standard. So from that aspect, I feel like having them come to us, that is an aspect of we do actually get to make some type of impact. But some of the language in the recommendations was vague, and it leaves a lot of room for interpretation. And that is part of what for lack of a better word, scared a lot of these lines off, because they might book and then current Harbor Commission or staff interpret it one way, the next commissioners or staff interpret it a different way, and then they're getting canceled on. And so I just want to point out, this has been a 50% reduction for my business, but also the waterfront's fees that they charge, but also the fees the waterfront gets, the percentage rent from us on what we get to the waterfront. So for the waterfront, this is a twofold hit of a revenue stream. And I'm not saying that's the only thing that should be considered. Far from it. But I do want to point that out. And it's been fairly significant for our small business to have just taken on this lease, to have taken on this landing. We have a very ambitious renovation coming up that we had projected, and our projections have changed significantly because of these reductions. And that's going to change our ability to do our renovation at the way we wanted to. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Diamond. Mr. Lopez, do we have any other speaker slips for in-person public comment right now?
We have no more speaker slips submitted, but we do have 2 hands raised in Zoom. So we have
Great.
Lee Heller and Deanne Plaister. So Lee Heller, you can go first, and you are unmuted.
Great. Lee, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for your time tonight and much appreciation to all of you for your work on this program. I do want to second Nate Irwin's comments about every ship being evaluated. Also, by the way, it's fewer, not less ships. Sorry, that's the former English professor in me. So my question is, and maybe Ms. Diamond's answer is the accurate one, what is the policy that supposedly makes these companies say that we're too unpredictable, that we're too hard to deal with? The general criteria have been outlined pretty clearly, was identified in the presentation, so I'm not sure what is it that these cruise lines feel is too hard to understand. If it is in fact vagueness, then the answer to that is to tighten this up. I'm not aware of any changes since these were implemented last year that would have the cruise ship companies complaining that we are changing things and that we've canceled ships that were allowed before. So these claims seem a little vague in their own right. And what I would like to see is a concrete explanation of why these cruise ships are supposedly not wanting to come and how that can be addressed by tightening up and clarifying what is supposedly vague in these policies. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the other public comment online.
We also have Deanne Plaister. Deanne, you are unmuted and can go ahead.
Go ahead, Deanne.
Okay. Commissioners, my name is Dean Plaister. I'm a member of the executive committee of Santa Barbara chapter of Surfrider Foundation. And I'm a longtime ocean swimmer and surfer in the water, so I'm very concerned about water quality and air quality as well, as affected by the cruise ships. I've been watching the program as it moves along, and I'm encouraged to see that a lot of work has been done to clean things up. I would encourage you to keep up with that and keep the environmental standards as high as possible. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you, Dean.
Chair Stanek, we have one more hand that was raised, Carol Miller.
Great, Mrs. Miller, you have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
For voting to implement the rules that you did. I'm a native Santa Barbaran, and I have to say, when the cruise ship thing started, I just felt like it was a naval invasion every time I saw one of those parked out off of our coast. And so I feel like quite an emotional relief to not have seen so many this year. And I'm also an ocean swimmer, and also noticed, at least I thought there was a direct connection between the cruise ships and gunk floating in the water. So I'm happy to not have to worry about that as much. So I guess the other thing I want to say is, I don't really care what the big corporations want. If they are sincere about wanting to have their passengers stop in Santa Barbara, or people are interested in that, then they can just conform to environmental regulations that protect our waters. So not really too concerned about the big cruise lines. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your comment. Mr. Lopez, do we have any other comments online?
There are no speaker slips submitted and or further hands raised. Chair Stanwyck.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the commission? We have Commissioner Stedman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to my fellow commissioners for enduring the lengthy period of the cruise ship official subcommittee. So thank you, Chair Anderson and Commissioner Cohen, and thank you for everybody in attendance tonight. I have a question for staff. Did the South Coast Chamber of Commerce or Visit Santa Barbara express any interest in attending tonight to represent their side? They were quite vociferous during the subcommittee process.
I did not hear from them specifically on this, but again, this was an update, so it wasn't necessarily an action item, but no, I didn't hear from them.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Okay. Vice Chair Ford.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that I follow the cruise travel industry pretty closely, and I would say that cruise ships are being canceled across the world for a variety of different reasons. Cities are setting up all kinds of regulations that the cruise lines don't like. So I wouldn't say this is something that's specific to Santa Barbara. It's happening everywhere, and it's usually because of overcrowding and environmental concerns.
Great, thanks, Vice Chair. Commissioner Cohen?
I'll just say also that I know that the hotel business in general has been down right now, and tourism in general has been down. I think it's just a sign of the economy right now. So I'll just add, I agree.
Thanks for that, Commissioner Cohen. Commissioner McRae?
Yes, I just want to point out how fortunate that we all as Santa Barbans are to live in this beautiful town with very, very minimal industrial impacts, and yet still we enjoy the fruits of that industry that happens in other places and comes to us either through wires over the mountaintops or via trucks that come here. And I'm really pleased that we're willing to share what we have here with the broader community that helps make it all possible. I think at this point, we should think very carefully about jockeying with any of the kinds of regulations or wording that we have here. My sense is that we really need to rebuild that trust, that we will be consistent and things won't be changing on a dime. So people can count on us for what we promise. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner McRae. Yeah, I just wanted to just give a shout out to the public for all the input in this, the waterfront, and the cruise ship subcommittee that worked through this. I think that overall, over the last 2-3 years, it's been a really good compromise. And I think what we've set out to do, decrease the limit of cruise ships, increase the regulation, it's pretty much been very successful. But I also want to point out, why do we have a cruise ship program to begin with? And for me, from an economic standpoint, this is great to have companies paying for the maintenance and the capital expenditures of the waterfront. You think about things like the 4th of July, the maintenance of Stearns Wharf, the sustaining of the harbor patrol that keeps everybody safe. These are all expenditures that come from the revenue, like we saw from the sheet, of things like this cruise ship program. So I just want to point out that that is kind of why we have it. But also, too, we are operating under the assumption that, yes, all these rules are being followed. And I think that is very important. But ultimately, as well, I know council had talked about this, and I think that we are on a good schedule. And appreciate the presentation today, and looking forward to kind of continuing on this every year, revisiting this, because it is something that has gained a lot of public interest, and it's pretty important to the community. So thank you for putting this on the schedule for today, and thanks for the presentation. Any other commission members have questions, comments, or feedback regarding this? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Rodriguez. Appreciate it. We can move on to the department update. Item number 6, the director's report. Director Wilshire.
Chair Stanwyck, Harbor Commission, members of the public, Mike Wilshire, Waterfront Director. My portion will be pretty quick. We'll get a presentation up here. You can scoot to the next slide. I wanted to provide an update on our dredging program, dredging needs, and the state of federal funding for dredging right now. It's no surprise that all federal funding has been under scrutiny nationwide. We're not immune from that. What's shown on the screen right now is what we call the federal channel. So for decades, the federal government has provided funding to the Army Corps of Engineers to maintain and dredge the depth of that federal channel. It's a very defined area, and so any dredging outside of those kind of colored boxes is the responsibility of the Waterfront Department. But that federal channel itself, all of those colored boxes, has historically been the responsibility of the Army Corps of Engineers to permit, maintain, and ensure that we have sufficient depths for maritime traffic. The cost of that, and so the funding that we would typically receive from the federal government, is in the range of $3 to $4 million. Our most recent year was $3.6 million, and so that's for 1 year of dredging. Dredging is very expensive, very, very expensive to move sand. The Army Corps is contracts with a dredge operator to move 240,000 cubic yards of sediment per year. That amount has sort of been determined empirically and scientifically over time. Sand and sediment naturally move down coast. When the harbor was built in the 20s, it provided a large barrier to that natural sediment movement. So us dredging the harbor, and not only for the harbor entrance, but for mimicking that natural process and nourishing down coast beaches, is essentially a mandatory annual process. Next slide. So with respect to funding and federal funding concerns, again, historically for decades, we have consistently received funding as a part of the Presidential Army Corps Civil Works budget. That budget is upwards of $6 billion, and it's for projects just like this nationwide. As of late May, we were notified that our FY26 funding for Santa Barbara was removed. This came as a huge shock. Like I said, this has been 20, 30 years running that we have consistently received funding. There's a lot of reasoning for why we received that funding. The Coast Guard cutter is in place. We have the Santa Barbara Marine Safety Detachment, Coast Guard presence. We do have a large commercial fishing industry. Cruise ships play into that as a federal economic influencer of a port. So there's a long list of economic and safety reasons for there to be federal support of dredging the harbor. What that means that funding has been removed is that we've spent the last 2 months lobbying quite aggressively with Congress, Senate, our city council, county supervisors, to try and get that funding reinstated, try to plead our case for our need with the federal government. One thing to note is that we do have one funded dredge cycle left as part of our FY25 funding. The Army Corps has been very flexible and very good to work with. We are essentially kind of holding that one dredge cycle to use it strategically. So instead of just our natural path of saying, hey, let's dredge in the winter and dredge in the spring, we want to make sure that if this funding isn't going to be available in a future year, to use that when we strategically need it most. So the Army Corps is on board with that, and we'll continue to evaluate it as fall approaches. At a very simple level, when there's large swell and big waves, a lot of sediment moves. When there's small waves, very little sediment moves. So some years we get lucky and not a lot of sediment fills into the harbor. It would be a shame to expend that dredge funding and use it during a time when we didn't really need it. So it's kind of dire circumstances with our 26 funding being removed, but I look at this as like a 6-month to 12-month problem, not a tomorrow problem. And so we have some time to lobby and look at other avenues for getting funding for dredging. Next slide. Some of the impacts of not dredging. So obviously we know from our point of view, the waterfront, the harbor, if a harbor mouth is closed, that it essentially negates the entire use of the harbor. But some other things to consider are safety, first and foremost. So we are a Coast Guard presence. They have a detachment here as well as their cutter. Harbor patrol. So we're considered a safe harbor for transiting mariners. If you look at the coast of California, it's not the East Coast. Harbors and safe harbor areas are far apart from each other. You know, you look at, there's nothing to the north of us south of Point Conception. And so you look at if our harbor is actually closed, then we have harbor patrol can no longer perform their job in the ocean. Coast Guard cutter is limited. From an economic point of view, we do have a roughly $30 million commercial fishing industry that would be impacted. Our waterfront tenants alone, who are generally blue economy, ocean dependent related, do roughly $50 million a year in business. It's hard to put an exact number on the value of the recreational slips and ability to use those slips, as well as things like cruise ships and beaches, and just kind of the broader impacts of the region's blue economy and how tied it is to our harbor. And so you look at the cost of $3.5 million a year, it sounds like a lot of money, but you look at the overall impact of what the harbor has, and you kind of realize how important that dredging is. And I really don't see a scenario where we are not going to dredge the harbor. It is just kind of a has to happen type thing. We are just in a predicament right now with that federal funding going away. The other major impact, not to be downplayed, is kind of the coastal and environmental impacts. So dredging really does mimic that natural flow of sediment down coast. Even within a year or two, if we were not to dredge or even dredge less quantities, East Beach, Summerland, Carpinteria, all those beaches would slowly erode. There's potential for property damage during bigger storms. Tourism impacts. I mean, you look at volleyball courts at East Beach, it's hard to place an exact value on the value of actually having beaches and sand. And so when that sand goes away, that's a big problem. Next slide. And it's my last slide, but just to kind of talk about options going forward and what we're working on behind the scenes. Again, I mentioned that we are going to plan to be strategic with our remaining funding with the Army Corps. So we should be able to make it through this year with FY25 funds and potentially some leftover funds from previous cycles, but we're going to really try and use that as strategically as we can. Waterfront staff and city staff are kind of continuing our full court press on lobbying. So up till this point, I really want to thank our own city council, County Supervisor Roy Lee, Congressman Carbajal, our Senators Padilla and Schiff, who've been reachable, actively supportive, aware, understanding of the issue, and just everything you'd want all the way up the chain. And so they've been pushing as well as much as they can in Senate for reinstating this funding. And continue looking for alternatives, you know. I mean, it's pretty untenable to think that we could fund this on our own as the waterfront department, but working with the city, the general fund, the county, all other folks that this benefits. And so just kind of really going day by day, knowing that the best avenue is trying as hard as we can to get the federal funding reinstated. It's still very much a possibility. So the Senate and Congress are running through those budget discussions now. So every day I hope I'm going to receive an email saying, hey, your FY26 funding's been reinstated. So with that, I'll pass it back over to the commission if there are any questions, but did just want to provide you all with an update on where we stand with dredging for the coming year.
Great, thanks for that, Director Wiltshire. Do we have any questions from the commission? Commissioner McRae.
Yeah, so I'm measuring out distances. It looks like the equidistant line between here and Morro Bay is about 65 miles out there. That's a lot of turf to not have very much coverage. For Coast Guard, for safety, Ventura is not quite so far. It's 24 miles away. But then I have to think, well, what happened to Ventura with respect to their funding? And what's happened with Morro Bay with respect to their funding? What's it look like coast-wide for safety?
Yeah, to that, we're not alone. A lot of the harbors to our north, their funding was also removed. I know that Ventura received roughly half of their usual dredge funding, so they did receive some. Doesn't seem as though there was a ton of rhyme or reason on how that was selected, but yeah, we're definitely not alone, and so that we're lobbying for our own cause, but we're also a member of CMANC, which is California Maritime and Navigation Conference, which lobbies essentially for California ports and harbors up and down the coast. So kind of a joint effort on getting some funding for California ports and harbors as well.
Thank you. definitely concerning. I'm kind of just assuming that we're going to roll the dice on the fall dredging in order to be able to make sure we have a spring dredging.
Yeah, that's the plan as of now, unless the funding picture changes between now and now and fall.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Commissioner Cohen.
Thank you. I've been concerned about this issue and aware of it, so it's good to hear more, and it does sound very dire. Given where we are right now, is there a plan B? Because I am not sure that, well, there's a lot of uncertainty here. So if there's not federal funding that comes down, do we have reserves in order to make sure that the harbor stays open? Is there another entity? I mean, have we looked at state resources, that type of thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. There's kind of plan B, C, D, E, and F, depending on all the scenarios. So the federal government and the Army Corps still has an obligation to keep the channel open. So we saw that a few years ago. The fund that they use to maintenance dredge is in the president's budget, but the Army Corps also has funding for emergency dredging. That's not the best scenario, but if the harbor does fill in, we can essentially notify the Army Corps of Engineers, and they will emergency dredge a minimal channel to allow passage. So that's in our reserve to use as well. We have reserves right now. The Waterfront Department does. If it were to fall completely on us, we could potentially fund an additional year of dredging on our own. That would all but deplete our reserves. And it would definitely put us well below our policy limit for reserves. We could also have discussions with City Council and the City General Fund to either take a loan or have them pay for some of it, because it's a city benefit as well. It's broadly important to the County of Santa Barbara and communities to the south, and so we can look at things like fees, cost share, special district, all sorts of things on how to generate funds, on how to cover these costs. But like I said at the beginning, there's not a scenario in my mind where the harbor won't be dredged at regular intervals. It's not an option. The only thing is where we find those dollars. It's not like is it going to happen or not? It's just where we find the money.
Is the $3.5 million figure then, is that for one dredging and we do 2 dredging cycles, or, I'm sorry?
Yeah, no, that's the annual cost. And so
That is the annual cost.
And dredging is very unit based, and so that's roughly the cost to dredge, the 240,000 cubic yards, which will essentially completely clear our federal channel. And so there are given years when we don't dredge that much because there wasn't that much sediment in there, and so those dollar amounts can be less. But that $3.5 million is sort of the full freight cost for a year's worth of 2 dredging cycles.
Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson?
What is the timeline? Is there a logistical concern where a large storm comes and everyone's calling a Pacific dredge to have them come help out because they're doing the same thing we are, and we're in some limbo stage where we can't use the harbor for a while? What is the time? Is there a concern around the timeline of getting them there if something is quickly needed?
Yeah, it's a great question, and of course. We can't dictate. Pacific Dredge is a private business. They do dredging work all the way up and down the coast of the United States, so we can't dictate where that dredge is at any given time. The Army Corps can't dictate where that dredge is at any given time. They hire them under contract to do a job. So if we have to do that under duress, we may well have to get in line or pay more, or however that works when there's a disaster and contractors are in need. So yes is the short answer. It's concerning.
Great. Any other questions from the commission? All right. Thank you, Director Wiltshire. We can move on to item number 7, the department update, the harbor operations report.
All right, good evening once again, Chair Stanwyck, and the Harbor Commissioners and members of the public. I'm Harbor Operations Manager Nathan Aldridge. And to close our meeting, I'd like to briefly present this evening's Harbor Operations Report on our recent 4th of July. This year's 4th of July celebration saw, thankfully, clear and beautiful skies, giving everyone a great show all along the waterfront. Thousands of people came together and enjoyed a wide range of fun along the beaches, from music to food, culminating in a spectacular 20-minute fireworks display from Garden State Fireworks. And enhanced fireworks experience, music was simulcast via local radio, synchronized to the show. And highlighting Waterfront's commitment to safe boating, Harbor Patrol had a strong presence out on the water and in the marinas all weekend long. So over a holiday weekend, officers initiated 62 marine law enforcement contacts and terminated the voyage of 5 vessels due to either hazardous operation or various equipment violations. These preventative contacts go a long way towards preventing potential rescue calls at a later time. And with a strong presence out on the water, officers also effected 1 water rescue and responded to several medical emergencies around the water in the marinas. And so I'd like to give a big thank you to not only the Harbor Patrol officers and operations staff, and also everyone on hardworking facilities and parking teams as well, whose hard work all weekend helped the event go smoothly. And as you know, it takes a village to pull an event off like that. And that wraps up tonight's operations report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Aldridge. Do we have any questions from the commission? All right. I like how you said clear skies. I remember last year was super foggy, so yeah, nice evening. All right. Great. Thank you. All right, we can move on now to the administrative actions part of the agenda, the election of the Harbor Commission Chairman and Vice Chairman. Mr. Lopez, can you please read the recommendation for us?
Yes, this is the recommendation for item 8. Recommendation the Harbor Commission nominate and elect the Harbor Commission Chairperson and Vice Chairperson for fiscal year 2026 per the City Charter, Section 804.
Great, thank you. I just want to say it was an honor to serve as the chairman for this past year, and we'll start off by taking nominees for chairperson for the next year. Yep, Vice Chair Ford?
Thank you so much. Well, not surprisingly, I'd like to nominate Adam Stanwyck for Harbor Commission Chair for 25-26. Working so closely with Adam, I can tell you that he's well-prepared, thoughtful, knowledgeable, and easy to work with. He works really hard to ensure that the Brown Act is followed and that the public at the same time and the staff and the commissioners have opportunities for communication, information sharing, and even debate.
I'll second that.
Great, thank you. We have a nomination and a second. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, great. Mr. Lopez, can you please do a vote for us?
Yes, this is a motion by Commissioner Ford, seconded by Commissioner Stedman to nominate Adam Stanwyck as the chairperson for the Harbor Commission for fiscal year 2026. Commissioner Ford.
Yes.
Commissioner McCray.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Nelson is absent. Commissioner Stedman.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson. Yes. Commissioner Cohen.
Yes.
And Chair Stanwyck.
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Nelson absent.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to kind of go over, this past year, and thank you guys for your increased confidence in me. And I'm really proud of not only, the work that I did as chair, but also to the work that the whole commission has done in general. And just looking back at this past year, I think of some of the highlights for me was the vessel insurance, the creation of more commercial fishing slips, and then obviously the passage of the harbor, the budget that we do every year. So that for me was really special for those 3 things. Also too, I just wanted to say that for going forward, we have the strategic planning work group, and I wanted to commend Vice Chair Ford on her work with that. And I think that's kind of, looking forward, one of the biggest projects that the commission has for the next upcoming year. And with that, I would like to nominate Vice Chair Ford for another term as Vice Chair.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second for Commissioner Ford as Vice Chair. Do we have any other nominations? Great. Mr. Lopez, can you please do a vote for us for Vice Chair?
Yes, and this is a motion by Chair Stanwyck, seconded by Commissioner Cohen. Commissioner McCray.
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson is absent. Commissioner Stedman.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen.
Yes.
Commissioner Ford.
Yes?
Chair Stanwyck.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Nelson absent.
Great. Thank you all. All right. Looking forward to another year. And we're closing out the meeting here. Do we have any commission, or actually, do we have any staff communications?
Nothing other than congratulations on the reappointment, or the, re-election. 1 year's not enough. But nothing else to add for staff.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Do we have any other commission communications? Commissioner McCray.
Yeah, this is just kind of late. This is, I think, the first year that voter cards were required of everyone. Are you finding that people have those? Giving you a shot.
Yeah, Chair Stanwyck, Commissioner Stedman, excuse me, Commissioner McCray. That's a fantastic question, and it is been incorporated as part of Harbor Patrol's boating safety contacts out on the water on a regular basis. So may not be surprising when checking for equipment, life jackets, flares, sound signaling device, fire extinguisher, and then voter ID card. With very few exceptions, those who have a Coast Guard license, rentals, but we're seeing wide amount of compliance, which is fantastic. And so the officers are what I consider preventative safety for us, oftentimes education first and then enforcement second, but we have issued citations for some individuals who don't have that in rare cases, but it's encouraging to read the logs and talk to officers out there in the water that this has been broadly messaged, not only throughout the state, but with sandwich boards and down at the launch ramp, and then every time the officer contacts someone out on the boat. So yes, there is a fair amount of compliance.
Thank you for that. It's really good to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. One other thing I wanted to point out was vessel insurance is something that we talked about and voted on in the past. I received a notice from the Waterfront Department in the mail regarding the compliance of vessel insurance, and from my perspective, it was super easy. I was able to log in, download my certificate of insurance, upload it to the department's website via email, and it took me all but 2 to 3 minutes. So I'm glad to see that moving forward, and glad to be kind of part of that. And hopefully, people can do it sooner rather than later. So thank you guys for doing that.
Who is our point person on the insurance program?
Well, our front office is managing that, so Jeanette, but we do have a specific email address, so vesselinsurance@santabarbaraca.gov, and so that's kind of a collective account where everything can go. And just to mention, we did also have sort of an insurance open house last week as well, and so we had a pop-up tent out front of the office with city staff there, sort of taking walk-bys and explaining the insurance program, and also had a number of representatives from the insurance industry who were up in our conference room. And so anybody who wanted to kind of ask insurance-specific questions, how do I get it? How does it apply? Does it apply to my boat? What do I need? So that was pretty well attended by folks asking a lot of questions at the city level and kind of the insurance policy level. So that was nice to see.
Great, thanks for the update on that. Any other commission communications before we wrap up here? Okay, with that, we can move on to adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.